It's time for tea time.
What is going on, everybody? It is your boy, Royalty, and we want to welcome you back to Tea Time TV, Tea Time Podcast. Depending on where you're listening, depending on where you are right now. But this is the spot where we talk truth, we talk therapy, and we talk transformation. As I stated, I'm your host, Royalty. Be sure to follow, be sure to like, be sure to subscribe. As today, I want to talk about something that I think a lot of us need to hear. And honestly, it's something that we probably need to remind ourselves of from time to time. And that's just simply taking ourselves seriously. Take yourself seriously. Before I jump into this, this is coming out of a long week I had with a lot of things not falling through due to I'm not sure of what, timing or whatever it was. But what came upon me from this is just how much it seems that people are not taking themselves serious, but are looking for someone to take them serious. You hear so many people like chasing dreams and pursuing goals and all types of things. You hear this all the time. And what happens is, from another perspective, you can see how so many people allow for challenges and obstacles to come in their way. Um, but it can lead you to a point where you're just asking, like, dang, like, how serious are you taking your career? Or how serious are you taking your art, your passion, your business, whatever it is that you want to do? How serious are you taking it? But most importantly, how serious are you taking yourself? Now, when I say take yourself seriously, I'm not talking about walking around thinking you're better than everybody. It's just simply believing in yourself. I'm not talking about being arrogant. I'm not talking about believing that everybody owes you respect. I'm not talking about, anything right there on the surface level. I'm talking about, something a little bit more deeper. I'm talking about, looking at your own life and deciding, am I truly worth the effort? Are my goals worth the effort? Um, is my peace worth protecting? Is my health worth prioritizing? Is my time valuable? Does my word truly really mean something? Does my future matter? Ask yourself these questions. Take yourself serious. And if I'm telling you to go do something, it's just something that I'm telling you that I've also done for myself. I have took the time to ask these questions to take a, attempt at following through and getting to certain points in my life that I've gotten to, where I may have been in situations where I felt that, there was no light at the end of the tunnel. There was no better option. I took the time to ask myself, was my peace worth protecting? I had to set boundaries in certain areas of my life for that. Is my health worth prioritizing? What do I have to live for? What things, who's dependent on me? What's counting on me in my life? Is my time valuable? Why am I sitting around wasting so much of it? So I've taken these steps myself, before bringing them, forward, to you all. Oh, excuse me. Bringing it forward to you all. You know what I mean? So one of the biggest, one of the biggest problems that we have is that, we want other people to take us seriously before we've actually demonstrated to ourselves that we're serious about who we're becoming. And that's where this episode stems from. So what does it mean to truly take yourself serious? Let's start there. What does that actually mean? Because I think that people hear, that phrase and they automatically think about success. They automatically shift their minds and relate it to money, related to career, related to status, you know, related to accomplishments. But that's not necessarily what I'm talking about. Taking yourself seriously means, recognizing that life has value and acting accordingly. It's saying that I'm not going to keep treating my life like something I can't get around, whenever I feel like it. I'm not going to constantly put myself last. I'm not going to keep making promises to myself that I can never keep. I'm not going to continue, accepting situations that I know are damaging me in my life. I'm not going to continue. I'm not going to keep saying, I want something while consistently doing things that move me further away from the things that I desire and the things that I want. At some point, your actions have to match your words. And that's where taking yourself seriously, becomes a question. That's where taking yourself seriously becomes a thing, because you can tell yourself that you're serious all day long, but actions speak louder than words, and the behavior is what tells the real story. And that's the thing that I want people to understand. Don't talk about it, be about it. If you're serious about what you want to do, if you're serious about who you're becoming, if you're serious about, all of those things, don't talk about it, be about it. Your actions are your vote. Every day you're casting votes that for a person, you're becoming. You're putting in that specific, request. Like, no, this is the person I want to be. If I want to be this person, I'm betting on that person. Every workout can be looked at as a vote that you're tagging in, because it's pushing you. It's betting on that better version of yourself. Every time you choose discipline over convenience, that's a vote. Every time you say no to something, no to anything that doesn't align with you, that's a vote. Every time you sit down and you work on your craft instead of scrolling for 3-4 hours on your phone, that's a vote. Every time you choose peace over unnecessary conflict, that's a vote. Every time you get back up after falling, anything that you choose to make a better decision for yourself in your life can be looked at as a vote that you're casting on yourself. And here's the thing. You don't have to win every day. Remember that you're a human being. You're going to have bad days. Sometimes you're going to procrastinate. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to lose motivation. You're going to fall short sometimes of your own expectations, but that's just life, and taking yourself seriously, is giving yourself permission. You know what I mean? It's not abandoning yourself. When you take that time to say, you know what, let me get it together. You know what I mean? You're taking yourself seriously. It's not abandonment. You're resetting. You're taking the time to regroup. You know what I mean? But in the same sense, you're still continuing to move. You're still continuing to go forward, because that reset and that regroup is needed. It's something that we all have to actually put more value into. We're always on go, and we're never really taking the time to reset and look into our minds and say, you know what, this is going good for me, or this is what needs to change. You know what I mean? But in the midst of doing so, we must make promises, and keep these promises to ourselves, and I think, this is one of the most important pieces of taking yourself seriously, is keeping promises to yourself. Take time to think about it. If you're constantly telling yourself, I'm going to start working out on Monday, and then Monday comes, and then Monday goes, and then I'm going to start saving money, and then you don't, and I'm going to stop dealing with this person, and you go right back. I'm going to finish that project, but months later it's still sitting there. Like, eventually something happens internally. You stop trusting yourself, and That's a dangerous place to be because because confidence is not just about how you look. It's also knowing, that I can count on me. I can depend on myself. And that becomes very powerful. Over time when we when we check out from the person that we want to be, we're just causing for that alignment and that distance to become stronger. But as we continue to keep promises and continue to show up for ourselves, we build a certain level of dependence within ourselves for ourselves. And that's powerful. You start keeping small promises to yourself. You start truly rebuilding that relationship with yourself. So maybe you will, take time to go for a walk for 20 minutes. You say you're going to do it, go do it. You say you're going to read 10 pages. You say you're going to do it, then do it. You say you're going to wake up on time. You say you're going to spend a certain amount of hours, towards a goal. You say you're going to do it, do it. Keep pushing yourself, keep teaching yourself. Lock into the mentality that your word matters, not only to everybody around you, but most importantly, your word matters to you. Because we got to stop waiting for other people to validate us. Stop waiting for somebody to validate you. Another part of taking yourself serious is realizing that you can't build your entire identity around other people's approval. Other people's approval do not make you who you are. You make you who you are. Because if your confidence depends on everybody agreeing with you, you're going to be exhausted. Because some people aren't going to understand you. Some people won't support your decisions. Some people won't recognize your potential. Some people will only see the version of you that they are comfortable with. And that's okay. But you can't spend your entire life trying to convince everybody else that you're worth believing in. At some point, you have to believe in yourself, and believe in yourself not blindly, not irrationally, but believe in yourself enough to take the first step. Believe in yourself enough to keep going when nobody's clapping. Believe in yourself enough to keep building when the results have not shown yet. Believe in yourself enough to say, I know what I'm working towards. I know what I'm working towards, even if you don't understand it. See, taking yourself seriously means having some form of standards. So let's talk about standards, because sometimes we complain about what people do to us while ignoring the standards that we've allowed ourselves to have. If you tell somebody, don't talk to me like that, but every time they do it, you stay in the same situation addressing it, what are you truly communicating? If you say, I'm not going to keep being treated this way, but you keep accepting the same behavior, what are you teaching yourself? Standards aren't just things that you tell other people. Standards aren't just the things that you enforce through your decisions. Standards become those things. And sometimes enforcing your standards means losing access to people. Sometimes it means walking away. Sometimes it means having uncomfortable conversations. Sometimes it means disappointing somebody. Sometimes it means disappointing yourself because the situation isn't what you wanted it to be. But you have to decide, what am I willing to tolerate? And just as importantly, what am I no longer willing to tolerate from myself? See, it all begins with self. As much as we want to look at blame and rely on external, it all begins internal. So take your dreams seriously. That's another thing I challenge people on. Taking your dream seriously. How many times have you told somebody what you want to accomplish and then immediately you followed it up with an excuse? I want to start this business, but what? I want to go back to school, but what? I want to get in shape. I want to write this book. I want to make music. I want to travel, but but and I'm not saying that there aren't legitimate obstacles, because there are. Life is real, bills are real, responsibilities are real. But sometimes the biggest obstacle is not the circumstance. Sometimes if it's sometimes that we convince ourselves that our dream can wait forever. And eventually later becomes never. So take time to ask yourself, what would I be doing differently if I actually believed my dream was worth pursuing? What would I be doing? Would I be studying? Would I be practicing, saving, networking, creating? Would I be making different decisions? Because taking yourself seriously means your dreams don't just live in your imagination. They start showing up. They start to show up in your calendar. They start to show up in your budget. They show up in your habits. They start showing up in your priorities. So what? You don't have it all figured out. Really and truly, does anybody have it figured out? Ask yourself that. So what? You don't have it all figured out. But we can make something clear. When you make a choice, when taking yourself seriously does not mean you have to have it all figured out. We understand that taking yourself seriously can still leave you confused. It can still look like healing. It can still look like learning. In the process, you'll still make mistakes. You'll still feel afraid. Sometimes we think we need confidence before we take action. But sometimes confidence comes because we took action. You don't always need to feel ready. Sometimes you just need to be willing. Be willing to start. Be willing to learn. Be willing to fail, adjust, and always be willing to try again. In this process of becoming a podcaster, as becoming a content creator, as becoming a YouTuber, as becoming an artist, as I've failed, I've been afraid. I had to learn. I had to adjust. I have to prep. I had to cancel out the external. What will people say? What will people think? Am I doing it up to other people's standards? No, I do it up to my standards. I take the in extensive time to prep and get it done. And if I fail, I try again. No views, I keep going. Because as much as I'm doing it for you, I'm doing it for me. So stop abandoning yourself. This might be the biggest point that we'll talk about in this entire conversation. Stop abandoning yourself. Stop abandoning yourself every time something doesn't work. Stop abandoning yourself because somebody rejected you, because you made a mistake. Stop abandoning yourself because you're not where you thought that you'd be by now. Because you think that somebody else is ahead of you. Your timeline is your timeline. And sometimes you just have to look at yourself and say, I'm still here. Reminds me of a song by Elton John, I'm Still Standing. I'm still here. I may not be where I want to be. I may not have all the subscribers, all the followers, all the listeners, but I'm still here. I'm still learning. I'm still growing. I'm still trying. And truly, that counts for something. Take yourself seriously without taking yourself too seriously. And here's that balance. Yes, you're going to take yourself seriously, but don't become so serious that you forget to live. I have to remind myself of that. Continue to laugh, continue to have fun, continue to make mistakes, continue to dance, continue to travel, continue to create, continue to be. Spend time with the people you love. Enjoy the journey. You don't have to turn your life into one giant project of productivity. You don't have to optimize every second. You don't have to constantly work. Sometimes taking yourself seriously means recognizing that rest is a part of work. Joy matters. Peace matters. Relationships matter. Experience matters. Your mental health, spiritual health, physical health, it all matters. Your ability to enjoy your own life matters. The goal is not to become a machine. The goal is to become more intentional. So I invite you with me together. Let's do a 7-day challenge. And here's what I want you to do. For the next 7 days, I want you to pick one area of your life. One area of your life that you have not been taken serious. Maybe it's your health, your finances, your career, education, creativity, relationships, peace, personal development. Whatever it is, I want you to take it and I want you to ask yourself, if I took this seriously, what would I do differently this week? Not someday, not some month, not when everything smooths out and gets easier. This week. It's Monday. This week. And whatever that is, I want you to do it. Don't announce it. Don't wait for an applause. Don't need for everybody to understand. I want you to just move. Because sometimes the most powerful transformation happens quietly. Nobody sees the early mornings. Nobody sees the discipline. Nobody sees the uncomfortable conversations. Nobody sees the nights you wanted to quit, but you didn't. But eventually, the results become visible. And then that's when people start asking, what changed? And you know what the answer is?
It's time for tea time.
I started taking myself seriously. So before we close, I want you to remember this. You don't have to prove your worth to the entire world, but you do have to decide what your life is worth to you. What are you willing to invest in for yourself? What are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to change? What are you willing to walk away from? What are you willing to finally pursue? Because your life is communicating something to you every day. Your choices are communicating something. Your habits, your boundaries, your relationships, it's all communicating something to you. And you got to ask yourself, what are they saying? Are those things telling you that you're waiting? Are they telling you that you're scared? Are they telling you that it'll get done later? You'll do it later? I don't know. Or are those things saying that I'm serious about becoming the person that I'm capable of becoming? Because that's the shift. And you don't need permission to make it. You don't need everybody to understand. You don't need everybody to agree. You don't need to have everything figured out. You just need to decide. You just need to decide that I'm going to take myself seriously. Take my life seriously. My health, peace, purpose, future. I'm going to take it all seriously. And I'm going to start proving it through my actions, not my words. Because at the end of the day, the first person who needs to believe in you is you. If this helped you in any way, be sure to like. Be sure to comment. Be sure to follow. Be sure to subscribe. Be sure to share this with somebody. Somebody that you feel needs to start taking their life seriously. Take a moment to ask yourself, have you been taking yourself seriously? And let's make the change.
It's time for tea time.
Let's begin the shift. This has been Tea Time. This has been truth. This has been therapy. This has been transformation. I am Royalty. And I'll catch you on the next one.